Hello, friends, and welcome back to Doug Reads with Friends. It's a podcast in which I, Doug, read a book that one of my friends has chosen, and then we record a podcast together in which we discuss the book that they've chosen, our friendship, who they are, what they do, their relationship with reading. Really, it's just an excuse for me to get together with one of my friends and get to talk about a book. The book is the excuse. The friendship is the reason that we're really getting together. Today, you are in for a treat because if you do not know Alicia Hayes, you're going to get to meet Alicia and you're going to get to discover why she is one of my favorite people. And I think one of the favorite people of almost everyone who knows Alicia. Alicia and I have known each other for a very long time professionally. We have developed a friendship over that time. And she is someone who I think everyone who knows Alicia likes her, admires her. She's extremely good at the work that she does and exceptionally well-regarded professionally within the work that we do. Alicia has chosen a book for us to read. It is called Lost in Oaxaca by Jessica Winters Mireles. It's a book I had not heard of before Alicia chose it. It's from a genre that I don't know that I have ever read in before. And that's one of the exciting and fun things for me in this podcast is getting to read books, explore genres that I otherwise would completely ignore because it's just not the type of thing that I typically read. So I'm really grateful for Alicia for choosing this book. So let's get into the podcast and my conversation with Alicia Hayes about the book Lost in Oaxaca and our friendship. I have not talked much at all in the first two episodes about what I do for work. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit because it leads directly into today's guest. So I work at a university where I advise highly talented students on international scholarships and fellowships awards that you might know might include things like the Fulbright Scholarship or the Rhodes Scholarship. And through that work, I have been deeply involved with an organization called the National Association of Fellowships Advisors. And that's where I met today's guest, today's friend, Alicia Hayes, who does very similar work to what I do at the University of California at Berkeley. Alicia, welcome to Doug Reads with Friends.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. For those not in the world of scholarship and fellowship advising, for those who are not NAFA members, which is probably the vast majority of the very small number of people watching or listening to this podcast, you need to know who Alicia is. So I think there are very few people who are held in as high esteem as Alicia, who are as well-respected as Alicia, and who are just as admired and liked as Alicia. If you talk about people with incredibly high approval ratings in the world of NAFA, Alicia is way up there at the very top of the organization and someone who I have known. How long have we known each other? I was thinking a little bit today. It goes back a long way.
Goes back a long way, well over a decade, maybe about 15 years.
At least, yeah, because I was president of NAFA when you were secretary of NAFA, and that was before I moved to Abu Dhabi, which was in 2014. How long have you been doing this work at Berkeley?
I've been doing fellowship advising since 2001, so this is going into my 24th year.
Yeah, and has all of that been at Berkeley?
Yes. I've been at Berkeley the whole time. I came to the university in 1999, and I worked for the Alumni Association, but I started fellowship advising in 2001.
And how did that happen? Because I think I did not go into scholarship and fellowship advising intentionally. I think the vast majority of people who do the work that we do did not go into it intentionally. What's your story of how you got into it?
Yeah, I just fell into it. I think like most of, our colleagues in our field, I came to the university by chance. I had finished my first graduate degree and I was trying to find myself. I knew that I wanted to teach, but I hadn't found a location. And so I said, well, let me try higher education in a different realm. And so I found the position at the Alumni Association initially. And during that time, I was a program coordinator for the Alumni Leadership Scholarship, which is the university's oldest scholarship. And then I saw this office at the time. It had a name. The name was Scholarship Connection. And I wanted to be well versed in the realm of scholarships since I was coordinating this program. And so I met my predecessor in the position. And then I saw the position actually announced a year prior to applying. I thought, oh, no, maybe not for me. And then a year later, I saw it posted again, and I thought, you know what? That's a sign. I'm going to apply. And so that's how I fell into fellowship advising. I wasn't very knowledgeable about many of the programs. The one fellowship that I knew about was the Fulbright, because where I attended university, we did not have a Fulbright advisor, and try as I might, I couldn't figure out how to apply. So I worked several jobs to fund research and travel abroad when I was doing research for my first graduate degree. So yeah, that's how I fell into it.
And you've stayed in it, as many people do. What has kept you in the field, and what has kept you at Berkeley?
Really, it's the students that motivate me and has helped me to remain in the field of fellowship advising. I love to see them develop through the years, and I feel truly fortunate that many of the students who I met as freshmen, they've been successful in these competitions. I'm still in touch with them. I've attended weddings. I receive announcements of the birth of their children, and then some come back and they're faculty. So, just seeing and feeling that I have a part in their development of being productive human beings is something that keeps me in the profession. And Berkeley, is a wonderful place. It's the top public institution in the country, and I think number 3 in the world. But it is a special place. Just the people that I work with, they're accomplished in their own right, even though they may not be doing what they have initially set out to do if they're non-faculty. I have colleagues who are artists and poets and actors, and so it's just such a diverse community. I am from the San Francisco Bay Area, so Berkeley is home as well.
Is that where you grew up?
Not in Berkeley, but in the larger San Francisco Bay Area. So I'm one of those rare Bay Area natives, and I don't see myself leaving. I've been here since birth, so yeah.
Why do I have associations with you with New Orleans and Louisiana? Am I making that up completely?
No, not at all. So my mother is from Louisiana, and I have a large extended family from Louisiana. And so we have reunions every 2 years, and in the last, I would say, 7 years more frequently. So yeah, that's a large part of who I am and my kind of cultural outlook in the world. And, many people who live in the Bay Area, or I should say from the Black community, they migrated west during World War II. And my grandfather was one of those. And so there's a Louisiana contingent where he settled.
You've been very successful as a scholarship advisor. There's lots of ways that we can measure success in scholarship advising. One way I know is that you recently received a very large award from the university, which I know because I helped write one of your letters of recommendation for that. Can you tell me a little bit about that award?
Yes, the award that I received was the Mary Slakey Howell Award for Excellence in Advising. It's considered the top advising award at the university. Someone told me it's the Lifetime Achievement Award. And so I was so honored just to be considered for that. I have been active in the advising community on campus, and I really value and treasure that the university has put support behind advisors and the advising community and recognize our importance in helping our students develop and go through the educational process.
And you are also one of the very small numbers of people who have received the Suzanne McCrae Award from our professional organization, the National Association of Fellowships Advisors. So everywhere you go, you're just picking up these awards left and right, Alicia.
Yeah, I was really honored by that. It touched me so much to be recognized by our peers in NAFA, that organization means so much to me. I credit my development as an advisor from the connections that I've made through NAFA.
Absolutely. I feel exactly the same way. I tell everybody I can about NAFA and say I'm the advisor I am today because of NAFA. You also were recently elected the new vice president of our National Association of Fellowships Advisors, which means that you become president in 2 years. So congratulations on that. What are you hoping to do with that? What are you excited about for that?
I'm really excited initially in organizing the next biennial conference. That's something that I've had some experience with, but I find that process very exciting. Just seeing something coming from an idea and then germinating into this event. But in regards to the presidency, one of the things, two things I'm really interested in is creating a mentorship program. Again, I credit my development as an advisor from those interactions with NAFA. However, I recognize professionally I've never had a mentor, but over the years I've become a mentor. But it's been very unstructured, and I think actually you created a mentorship for the Truman Scholarship, and I signed up. And I loved that experience. I loved being able to work with a colleague and help them and be that sounding board and give them guidance. And I think coming into this profession can be disorienting because there's so much information that we have to learn about the various programs and how to approach them. And there's so many intricacies. And it helps if you have someone who can be your sounding board. I also recognize at our universities, fellowship advising is not very common, although, the profession, if we will call it a profession, I believe it is, has been around for 2 decades. There are many institutions that don't have a person like us at their institutions. And so it can be very isolating. And I felt that at Berkeley, where for 20 of my almost 25 years, I was an advisor of an office of one. So that mentorship program is something that I would love to develop and have NAFA start. The other thing that is extremely important to me is the community of community college transfer students. I was a community college transfer student to my undergraduate institution, and I believe that we should embrace the community of community colleges, as many of the students that do transfer our institutions, or I should say a growing number, are community college transfers. So I think we need to make a better connection with that demographic of institutions, because there are some opportunities in which students are eligible for when they start there. So that's something that I'm really passionate about.
Do you have a favorite award? Is there one that you always like when it comes time for that award, or recruiting, or the students who apply for it tend to be your favorites?
The Truman.
Now, can you explain the Truman briefly for people who maybe are not in the world of scholarship advising and may not know the Truman?
So the Harriet Truman Scholarship is actually a living memorial to the former president, and it seeks to support students who wish careers in public service. And it's public service broadly defined. It offers $30,000 for graduate school. However, students have to be junior at the time of application.
And what do you love about the Truman?
I love the fact that Truman scholars are selfless, but they want to make a difference. They truly do, in whatever realm. It could be at the very micro scale in their local communities or internationally, but they are really motivated to wanting to make a difference, and they're selfless. And I feel fortunate to have worked with not only Berkeley's Truman Scholars, but somehow other Truman Scholars from other institutions have crossed my path, and I've developed relationships with them. So it's just a wonderful scholarship, and those students who apply for that tend to be my favorites. They also tend to be those that I continue to maintain relationships with as well.
Berkeley's huge. Is it just you doing this work? How many, like, do you have other people working with you? How many students do you work with a year?
Well, again, I was an office of one up until 2021 when I was able to obtain funding to hire a part-time person. And then more recently, I was able to make that position full-time. So now we're office of two. The hope is that we'll continue to be able to gain funding to add to our office. Our undergraduate population, I believe, upwards of 33,000. So yeah, an office of two for that population. In terms of students that we serve, and I have tracked it, I believe we serve well over close to 600 students every academic year.
Oh, that's a huge number. Now, I was realizing earlier today that in the U.S., in the scholarship advising world, today is a big day because it's U.S. Roads Interview Day. This podcast won't come out until February. We're recording in November. Do you have students that you are closely tracking today and their every move and hoping for good news later today?
Yes, I have two, one in Texas and one in California here in San Francisco. So, yes, it's exciting. I've given them really, I told them, you need to call me. I need to be the first person that you call after your notification, even before your parents.
I usually tell my students, mom and dad get the first call, but I get the second call.
So you're better
For
than
me.
me.
I do not have any U.S. finalists this year. I do have a Canadian finalist.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
because I'm in Abu Dhabi, the time zones are such that by the time she finds out, it will be the middle of the night here. So I will check my phone first thing in the morning to see what messages I might have from her. It takes a little bit of the tension out, knowing, okay, I can't sit and wait for the phone to ring. I just have to go to bed and see what happens in the morning.
Yes, I think I would like that better. So I'll be waiting with my phone next to me.
Great. Well, let's turn a little bit and talk about you as a reader, since this is a reading focused podcast. What's your relationship with books like? Have you always been a reader? Are you much of a reader now? How do you think about your life with books?
I love books. I love reading. I've loved reading since I was a child. I remember my mother signed me up for I think it was the Scholastic Book Club. And I used to receive books. I think they were monthly. And I've always loved reading. I'm still an avid reader. I will say that I read maybe well over 100 books a year.
Wow.
I sometimes I'll read maybe two to three a week. It just depends, and
That's
yeah,
amazing.
and
Okay,
but there are weeks that I won't read. But yeah.
is there a genre that you particularly read a lot of, or how do you choose what you're going to read next?
I don't know if I have one favorite genre, but I do like Regency era historical romance novels or historical / murder mystery novels. I also love novels that involve the supernatural, or I don't know if it's the supernatural, but with vampires and witches and magic and things like that.
Go back a moment. You said you had a long description of the first type of book, which included the word Regency. And I was like, I'm lost. So tell me what that is.
Yeah, it's during the period in England when there was a Prince Regent. So it's during the early 1800s.
Do you have a favorite author or a book that this one in this series is coming out next, or something like that you look for?
I do have some favorite authors in that particular genre. I like Stephanie Lawrence, Julia Quinn, Amanda Quick, which I think is a pseudonym. So those are a few. In the other realm, my favorite author is Anne Rice. And also, there's a series of books that I've read and reread by Deborah Harkness. The first book in a series of three is Discovery of Witches, which they made into, I believe, a series of like a mini series. But yeah, those are the ones that I love.
You mentioned rereading books. Do you reread very often?
No, not very often. It just depends on my mood. If I can't find anything that's new, that I like, then sometimes I'll go back. Or if I'm having a discussion with someone and they've come across it, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to reread that. So it just depends on my mood.
What's your reading habit? Do you have a particular place you like to read, a time of day?
Usually it's in the evening, and sometimes it's right before I'm going to bed, which can be a bit problematic because if it's a really good book, then I won't go to sleep. Maybe I'll get 3 hours of sleep. But and then also in the evening, sometimes after I've prepared dinner, I'll read to relax and more time over the weekend than during the week. I love these books because, being a graduate student for so many years and having to read scholarly work, it allows me to escape. And so I get a lot of pleasure. I still do occasionally read scholarly journal articles, but this, those two genres give me most of my kind of reading pleasure.
And are you a physical book reader, an ebook reader? Do you listen to audiobooks?
I love physical books. I had so many that I had to give away. I'm not big on clutter. So I did many years ago. I bought a Kindle and then several Kindles, and I have mine right here. But if it's a book that I really like and I want to touch it, I will buy the physical book and put that in my bookshelf. But I am mindful because books take up space and, space is limited. And again, I'm anti-clutter. So I've never actually listened to audiobooks. I know that they're very popular, but I haven't gotten to that point. I like to hear or create the voices in my head rather than hear someone else's voice. So to me, I don't knock people who listen to audiobooks, but I like to create who this person is, how they look and how they sound in my head.
Do you belong to any book clubs? I mean, you read so much. Is this a hobby that you share with others very much, or is it just a solo endeavor that you do for you?
It's just me. I would love to join a book club so I could discuss what I'm reading with others, but I haven't been able to find a community yet.
All right, Bay Area people, you've got a reader. Come get her. And let's start moving towards talking about the book that you chose for us to read for today. And I want to start by asking, what is a romance novel? How do you define what a romance novel is?
I think romance novels can be a bit formulaic, but usually there's a protagonist who may have not have found love or romance, and sometimes there may be an individual that they encounter and they're at odds. So it could be like an enemies to lovers romance, and then, they battle and they find that they are attracted to each other and then the relationships develop. And then there might be someone or something that kind of deters that relationship and then they overcome and then it's happily ever after. So that's how I think they tend to run.
Does it need to end with that happily ever after? Is that an important part of the genre?
I would say so. I mean, I think that they can end, let's say, with loss, but I think as a reader, I don't want that. I want happily ever after.
Now, tell us what book you chose and why.
The book that I chose was Lost in Oaxaca, and what attracted that book to me was the place in which it was placed, which is in Oaxaca, Mexico. But the author is Jessica Winters. I think it's Mireles. And I love Mexico. I've traveled there a lot when I was in my 20s, and Oaxaca was a place that I've always wanted to travel. And so I thought, you know what, let me check this out. I read a little excerpt of it. So yeah, that is what caused me to choose it.
Now, you said you spent a lot of time in Mexico. Do you speak Spanish?
Yes, I do.
I did not know that. That's good to
Yes.
learn. I actually have never been to Mexico. I mean, I've lived abroad now for 12 years. I was a
Hmm.
Peace Corps volunteer. I've traveled a good deal and somehow never made it to Mexico. So I need to get there. I've seen a lot of the world, but somehow never seen our southern neighbor. It's shameful of me, really.
I would recommend it. I mean, there are so many different regions, and just even culturally, depending on which state you go, it's a whole new world.
Yeah, and I mean, you said now you have not been to Oaxaca, is that correct?
No, no, I have not.
And that's one of the things that I thought that the author did really well in this book was like I felt like I got a really good sense of the culture, the people, the colors. She talked a lot about the colors of Oaxaca. You've not been there, but in terms of your general understanding of Mexico, did that make sense to you?
It did. It did. I think that she did do a good job of describing place and culture, and especially of Oaxaca, which is very diverse in regards to indigenous communities. And I respected that. So I wonder if she's traveled to Oaxaca. She really had a good understanding.
Yeah, I believe she said in the acknowledgments that her husband is from Oaxaca. So
Mm.
I think she referred to him as my Alejandro, Alejandro being the male protagonist, the male lead in the book. And so, yeah, I think that my sense is that she's certainly learned a lot about Oaxaca, if not spent a lot
Mhm.
of time there. So am I correct in saying this is a romance novel, right? Do I get that part right?
It is. I would say so. It was an interesting read. It was not the typical romance novel, but
How so?
yes. I'll just be very honest with you. I had a lot of high hopes when I read this book, but I did not like the protagonist. I
I
didn't
did not
like her
either.
at all. And that's not common when you read romance novels. You usually like the heroine, but I did not like her at all. She bugged me from beginning to end.
Yeah, let me find. There was a quote that I pulled actually. It's this in my version. It's page 191. She says,
Mhm.
"I know I've been hard to deal with. I'm always saying the wrong thing. If I'm not fainting or bursting into tears, I'm complaining, starting a fight with you, or getting drunk on mezcal." I was like, "Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't like you. I didn't
Yeah.
understand why Alejandro liked her." Is Alejandro typical as a male lead in a romance novel? And I don't mean to peg you as the expert
Mhm.
on romance novels, but you've read more than I have and you chose this one. So I'm
Mhm.
coming to you for advice.
Would say that he's a little different as well. I mean, his character was really interesting because he was keeping the secret, although, and you could tell. But there were several occasions where he tried to confess to her. And then, one occasion was when they were in the community of San Mateo right after, the bus
The
fell
opening,
down.
the
Yeah.
opening scene.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, fell down the mountainside or was washed away by the storm. He said, I need to tell you something. And then the truck that was transporting them up to Ayala, then he couldn't do it. So there were several things, but I thought he was a little bit overly secretive. He was, I guess, a kind of this strong male protagonist, but he was an interesting character. The secretiveness I thought was very interesting. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe he is a common male romance character.
What were the parts that you liked best about the book?
I loved reading about just the culture in Oaxaca and getting just that kind of glimpse of it. I could feel myself there. I mean, I've been in communities in Mexico and other places that are fairly similar. And so just, when the descriptions of the church or the descriptions of the festival or even Tia Nifa's house, and just imagining how it was organized and landscaped. So just kind of the description of place, I really appreciated.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That to me was one of the big highlights of the book. I think related to that, something that I really appreciated was the glimpse into the life of either undocumented people in the
Hmm.
U.S. or people who had immigrated to the U.S. and were scrapping together a life, right? Which Alejandro, he came to the U.S., he went to university, he started his own landscaping business. That all
Hmm.
struck me as now you know this. I think you're much closer to the world of Mexico and people coming to California, documented or undocumented. But did that strike you as realistic as well as you know it?
Yes, it did. And also the assumptions, which is one of the reasons why the protagonists bothered me, that I think many people make of people who migrate to the US, whether legally or as undocumented individuals. But I do feel that those descriptions were very realistic, and the fears and just the whole drama that was surrounding Graciela and wanting to get back to the US, and how individuals are really at the mercy of coyotes who either are genuinely helpful or not, but can take their money. And it is a risk of their lives. And so I felt that was extremely realistic.
One thing that struck me as I was reading this book, and I thought sometimes it worked in favor of the book and sometimes it didn't, was that it felt very cinematic to me, almost as if I was watching a description of the movie as it was happening, which made me wonder. Romance novels are extremely popular. I think it's a huge industry in the United States. And yet I feel like we don't get nearly enough rom-com movies. And who doesn't love a good rom-com movie? Why do you think? I mean, I could see this being made into a movie.
Right.
Why do you think that there aren't more rom-coms based off of romance novels?
I think that there are. I don't think we realize it, but I think that there are. I think what you see, because romance novels can be very formulaic, I think we see the same types of stories following that formula. One example that I'll give you is Jane Austen and the story of Emma. And that's been redone for both within that time, or I should say that period of history, but also brought up even to current times if you think about Clueless. So I think that we do see them. I think that they've been changed. But I think, well, okay, I'll just tell you another thing. And one of my guilty pleasures is I love the Hallmark Channel, which is completely rom-com all the time. So I would argue that we do see more than we realize.
What else about this book struck you that you want to talk about?
I mentioned at the beginning when we started to discuss the book that I've never read a book where I did not like the protagonist. And Camille, or Camilla, I felt that she was very unlikable. But I wanted to feel sympathetic towards the character, but I had a hard time doing so until the very, very end. But still, it was still a bit difficult. I recognized that she was an individual that went through trauma. She was sheltered. She had this kind of ignorance and naiveness in regards to the world and outside the world. But when you think of someone who is educated, you think, she should know more. But she was very hard to like. And despite that, I liked the where she was placed, and that she had to go through adversity, and she had to confront her assumptions, and she had to confront, her personality. She seemed to be an individual who was easy to anger. And then she definitely would say inappropriate things and do crazy things such as drink mezcal, and probably when she shouldn't have drank the amount that she did. So it was very difficult to like her, but overall I thought it was an interesting read. It was a very easy read as well. So if you're looking forward to escaping into the world of Oaxaca, and also the world of music. I love the discussion of classical music. It is a genre that I have some familiarity with, but not a lot. So I love that as well. And just, when she heard notes, that's something I am familiar with. So I would recommend it.
I thought it did what it wanted to do very well, right? It wasn't trying to be great literature. It was trying to
Right.
be a fun, readable romance novel set in Oaxaca and to teach us about Oaxaca. I have a very similar view to you as to the female protagonist. There was a moment a few years ago that I thought of a lot from real life while reading this book, which was that my daughter and I had gone to Tanzania to climb Kilimanjaro. And as we were waiting to depart, we were waiting in the line for passport control. And there was a young American woman very close to us speaking overly loudly, as our people tend to do sometimes. And she was recounting her adventures in East Africa to a friend. And she concluded by saying, "Africa was good to me." I kept thinking, like, Oaxaca was good to me. Like, it's this attitude of it is there to please me, right? It is there. I am there to consume it. I am there to be wowed by the people, or it exists to wow me. And I felt like that was Camille's attitude towards Oaxaca for much of the book, though she certainly gains appreciation of it in a much more genuine way as the book goes on. Anything else that you wanted to add, or any favorite passages that you wanted to read, or anything that you think that someone who's thinking about this book needs to know?
There wasn't a favorite passage, although I appreciated just the little snippets of Spanish that were included. But I think it's a great book for a person who is not very familiar with Mexico, that it may hopefully generate an interest, and if not reading other books that are centered in the country, at least travel to the country, but to recognize the diversity of the country. I'm a Latin Americanist, so I'm well aware of the diversity of Mexico, but I think that this book did a really good job, especially and showing Oaxaca is not only Spanish is spoken there, but also so many other languages. The one thing I will say is she mentioned the mole that was made, and the mole there, I believe, has like 24 different ingredients. And if you think of the mole as representing the cultures and the diversity of cultures of Oaxaca, that's something I just want to point out.
That's a great way to kind of wrap this up. Thank you. So one thing that I do with guests, a little tradition that I'm starting, is to think about the story of when and where and how in the context of this book, right? So in real life, the answer is we're going to meet at the next NAFA conference in summer 2027, which you will be planning and you will be very busy at. But if we were to use this book as inspiration, what do you think? Where might we go and what might we do?
Well, we could have, in the context of this book, I don't see us meeting in Oaxaca or in Mexico, but I could see us perhaps meeting in England if you're planning to participate in the summer study tour and thinking about going to Ireland and Scotland, and again, embracing the diversity of cultures in the UK when people don't really think about it, but there are. Yeah, if we could kind of see it in that way.
And instead of mezcal, maybe we'll have some good Scottish whiskey.
There you go.
All right, Alicia, thank you so much for being a guest on Doug Reads with Friends. Thank you for being my friend for a long, long time. I really enjoyed this. I absolutely would not have read this book without you choosing it for us. So I really appreciate you doing that and coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me. And thank you for being my friend.
Okay, friends, that's about it for today's episode. Thanks for listening. First of all, of course, a big thanks to my friend, Alicia Hayes, for choosing a book, for participating in this podcast, for being an all-around wonderful person who I delight in knowing. And I look forward to seeing next at a NAFA conference, maybe in Ireland, maybe in Oaxaca. Who knows? Who knows where life will take us? For our next episode, we are reading a very different book. A classic of literature that has had a renaissance in modern times with a new film adaptation recently and a new TV show on the way as well, I believe. A book I had never had the opportunity to read before, but I am so glad I did. You ready? It is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And let me tell you, if this is your image of Frankenstein, the square-headed green monster, which is what my impression of Frankenstein was before I read this book, you could not be more wrong. My mind was blown by this book. I had no idea what the actual story of Frankenstein was about, no idea what the creature was really like. I was stunned by this book. I loved this book. I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to read this book. If you've never read Frankenstein, over the course of the next couple of weeks before the next episode comes out, please go out, grab yourself a copy of Frankenstein, read it, and then come back as I talk about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus with my friend John Bowers. If you have any thoughts on this podcast, please reach out to me at dougreadswithfriends@gmail.com. I would love to get your thoughts, your ideas. Tell me what I'm doing right. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'm doing a lot wrong. That's okay. It's early on in this podcast's history, and I'll figure out as we go. Music for Doug Reads with Friends provided by my very dear friend, Erin Caffel. Please check out Erin's music on Spotify. She's an incredible musician, and I am honored to have her music as a part of this podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being my friend.